as we begin Friday. And Friday starts off rather cloudy, I think, for many, and there's the threat of some intense thunderstorms getting quite close to the southeast during Friday morning and early afternoon. Most likely at the moment they stay just far away from the southeast, but Friday's a generally unsettled day with rain or showers for many. More settled on Saturday with some sunshine.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good evening and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Very shortly, my comedy guests and myself will be taking a look at tomorrow morning's newspapers. But first, here's the news headlines here on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. An attempt by Labour to force the government to introduce an emergency budget to tackle the cost of living crisis has been defeated in the House of Commons. 312 MPs voted against the amendment to the Queen's speech, with just 229 in favour. They also rejected the Liberal Democrats' call for an emergency tax cut and an SNP call for a windfall tax. Speaking at the Confederation of British Industry's annual dinner, Chancellor Rishi Sunak said the government will act where it can.
Our role in government is to help cut costs for families. I cannot pretend that this will be easy. As I told the House of Commons yesterday, there is no measure that any government could take, no law we could pass that can make these global forces disappear overnight. The next few months will be tough. But where we can act, we will. Because tackling high inflation is not just an economic necessity, it is a social and moral necessity.
Earlier today, Labour repeated its call for a windfall tax on energy companies to help ease the squeeze on household budgets as inflation hit a 40-year high. The Consumer Price Index rose to 9% in the year to April, up from 7% in March. During Prime Minister's questions, Boris Johnson promised to look at all measures available to help struggling families. But Sir Keir Starmer accused the government of inaction.
Whilst he dithers, British households are slapped with an extra £53 million on their energy bills every single day. Meanwhile, every single day, North Sea oil and gas giants rake in £32 million in unexpected profit.
We're already spending £22 billion. We're already helping people with the cost of living in any way that we can, Mr. Speaker. But the reason we can do that is because we took the tough decisions to get this country through COVID.
A man who stabbed his landlords to death because he was paranoid about COVID has been found guilty of double murder. The jury took just 45 minutes to convict 46-year-old Daniel Briseno Garcia. He'd attacked Sonia Calvi and Edgar Daza at their home in South London during the first national lockdown in April 2020. He denied murder, claiming he was mentally ill at the time. Rangers have missed out on lifting the trophy at the Europa League final against Eintracht Frankfurt in Seville. After extra time ended 1-1, the match went to penalties, with Frankfurt clinching it 5-4. The last and only time the Scottish club has ever won a European trophy was half a century ago. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to headliners.
Good evening. Hello again. Welcome to Headliners. Joining me tonight, Leo Kearse and Eric McElroy. How are you, gentlemen?
I'm good, thanks, Simon.
Excellent. How are you, Eric?
I'm all right. I'm turning 50 this weekend. So
oh, this weekend. Lovely.
Bracing myself for the end.
Yeah, it is all downhill. To be
is.
honest, you've been over the hill for a couple of years now, to be honest, haven't you? You know,
that's rich coming from you. I feel like a teenager.
I turned 57 last week.
All right.
I like the odd numbers, actually. I always feel like the odd numbers, I don't know, it gives you some purchase on life.
It's a prime number as well.
Is it really?
57.
Can you just do that with your head?
Yeah.
Are you a bit of a Rain Man? I threw a box of matches on the floor. So do you feel that's do you have like a little bit of mysticism with numbers as well?
Yeah, I think there is. And interestingly, we're going to have that tonight because there's no story 1. So story 2 is story 1.
That's
so story 12 is actually unlucky number 13.
Yes. We don't eliminate them, do we, like hotels? They do that in hotels, don't they? No.
Actually, no, story 14.
Yeah, it's the unlucky one. Well, let's get and see what. In the meantime, let's have a look at the front pages and see what tomorrow's front pages will look like. We start with the Daily Mail. They have Tories triple tax cut boost, and we will be taking a little bit of a look at some of the purported government measures to ease the cost of living crisis, which is overwhelming us. There's also a picture there of Tom Cruise with his new girlfriend, I think, and what she is pretending to be her actual boots. They don't look real, do they? The Telegraph, Putin turns screw on global food supplies. They know where to place the blame. And there is a photograph on their front page, which is the Duchess of Cambridge standing next to a man in a very splendid feathery hat. We still got what it takes on that front. Independent, Thursday's Independent has top Tories turn on Sunak over cost of living crisis. That isn't a picture of the top Tories there, though. That is a Russian fighter who faces life in jail after admitting he killed a 62-year-old civilian in Ukraine. The Guardian has police chief warns of surge in crime as cost of living crisis fuels poverty. That is the story which we will be bumping up to number 1. The FT have gone with Sunak warns of tough times ahead as inflation hits 40-year high of 9%. And there's a picture of Erdogan there, who is stalling NATO talks with the new Nordic members. Thursday's Financial Times. Sorry, we've just had the Financial Times. The next one is the Mirror, the great inflation swindle. But also a picture of the Duchess of Cambridge and an extraordinarily large number of Union Jacks. The celebrations are being planned, of course, for the Jubilee weekend, which is coming up. The Times has hopes for a windfall tax blocked by number 10 team. Well, they seem to be dithering back and forth on that. And there is Kenneth Branagh, I think, on the front page there, representing Boris Johnson, or pretending to be him, or whatever the term is, in a new high-budget drama. We'll be taking a look at that later. The Sun has Vardy's to flee the UK. That is, of course, the Wagatha Christie story, which has somehow unaccountably failed to make the front pages elsewhere. And Eva sparkles for Top Gun Tom. And the Thursday Metro has cost of living crisis, inflation hits home, and that same picture of Kenneth Branagh and his cohort. I think I can't remember her name. Something. what is the actress who is playing on that? We'll come back to that shortly. It's Ophelia Lovibond. That's right. I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to say that. Exactly. The Daily Star finally has weapons of maths destruction. No idea what that's about, and it's probably the last you'll hear of it this evening. Thank you for your attention so far. We will be going into the newspapers in some depth now. So our first story, who has got this one? Eric, you're the second row that's become the first row.
I'm now
in
the
absence.
first.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the Guardian say that police are having to exercise some discretion in possible shoplifting and so on. Is that it?
Yeah, and stealing to eat, basically.
Yeah.
So the new Chief Inspector of the Constabulary, Andy Cook, has had an interview where he's talked about some of his policing strategies.
It's a terrible example of nominative determinism going totally wrong there.
Yeah.
It's quite obvious what he should have done for a living. Sorry to interrupt you. But
related to food is what you're saying.
Yes.
People have been told they need to learn how to cook.
It's provocative, isn't it?
They just need to steal the food first, I think is the lesson
And also,
from this
there's
story.
not many people named Barry Superintendent.
No.
So nominative
because
determinism.
Eric can't even pronounce constabulary.
I think
he's
I
been
made
in
a
this
good
country
run at
how
it.
long now?
I say the police. That's what I like to say.
The DA, the Commissioner.
Constabulary.
That sounds right.
Not bad at all.
practicing.
I've been coaching him. Anyway, let's do the story. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
Rather than focus on my diction. It's down to the cost of living crisis. People are shoplifting more because they're struggling to feed themselves. So he's saying the police are going to try and use a little softer touch with this sort of thing.
Yep.
I mean, it probably doesn't hurt for them because they can't really close any crimes anyway in the UK.
Well, that is a fair point because, of course, shoplifting traditionally is one of the ones that's fairly easy to close, isn't it? Because they're usually nabbed before the police get there. That's just to sort of go and scoop them up. So at what point do the police get to decide?
Well, he says they have a wide discretion to decide whether or not to prosecute. So I imagine they're going to look at a case, see what's being stolen, and try and make that decision. I think, like the light touch they've taken with some marijuana usage and that kind of thing. So here they're doing it so people can actually eat, which is a good thing.
So were they testing what somebody's body fat level is? To see
I hope that's not why. If you look at me,
not be trying to get away with
exactly.
Yeah, I think they should go back to the house and see what's in the cupboards.
Yeah.
And see whether, because it could just be Richard Madeley stocking up for Christmas.
If somebody's for a cheap thrill.
I'm already thinking, I'm eyeing up Marks and Spencer's, going to run out with some hams and some rib roast. I mean, see what they're nicking as well. If they're nicking like cans of chickpeas, something healthy and nourishing and cheap. Fair enough.
Can keep if you're 3 different housemates.
Yeah, if you're stealing like antipasti, that's obviously for a party, not for
Well, it might be
survival.
that. It might be that it's easier to get out. I mean, when you get those nice big flat tray, almost, the ones with the cured meats in, they go straight down.
You slide it down.
A can of chickpeas, that's a bulk.
Yeah, like the guy in Withnail and I with the pheasants.
Yeah. So if it doesn't taste good, you can steal it. But if it does taste good, you can't. Is that the rule?
I think if it's cheap, you got to be reasonable. I mean, if we're going to legalise shoplifting, I mean, marijuana use, they have discretion around marijuana use, but they're not stealing the marijuana. So it's not, it's not a crime that imposes on someone else. Whereas this does actually impose on the shops. They're also trying to make a living, trying to turn a profit.
True, and it will only push prices up further for the people who are honest enough to actually pay for this stuff, but not very much, to be fair.
Probably doesn't want to prosecute people too carefully because it might be the police that are stealing some of this food because they only got a 2% pay rise.
They have a helmet
the 9%.
that they can get a can of chickpeas under as well.
Exactly. So they're struggling financially. They might be the ones doing the nicking.
Yeah. No, that's true. I remember, though, it was only about 4 or 5 years ago, Michael Mosley, on our great competitor, the British Broadcasting Corporation, launched a campaign to encourage people to investigate intermittent fasting. Do you remember that? 2 days a week, you had to basically not eat, and this was really good and healthy for you. I think it's probably about time we brought that back.
Yeah, people should just
expand
see this era.
The period of intermittence.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Boris presenting that tomorrow.
Speaking of Boris, Leo, he's been accused of dithering over windfall tax. I picture him in a sort of red-handed scrumping apples or something in this kind of when I see Boris and windfall in the same...
Yeah, I've got no doubt that Boris in his earlier years ran out of Waitrose with various bottles and cans. But Keir Starmer has taunted Boris, saying that he can't make his mind up about a windfall tax. That was an impression of Keir Starmer there.
Spot on.
Thank you. About a windfall tax on huge energy firm profits, and says Keir is saying as inflation hits 9%, the Prime Minister has refused to say if he will consider the levy, which Labour says would raise £2 billion to cut bills and ease the cost of living crisis. Yeah. But I mean, a couple of things. That's a relatively tiny number in terms of government coffers, £2 billion. isn't a lot of money. And really, that energy investment is incredibly risky. If you're an oil firm, you've got to pay for the exploration. You don't know if the oil you get out, you're going to be able to sell it. You know, during lockdown, the oil price actually went negative. Yes. So oil companies had to pay to store their oil or somebody to take it away.
That is true,
like a mattress in Walthamstow. It's also... you know, we need to encourage more exploration.
People fly tipping their petrol.
Yeah, literally pouring it into the canal. You know, like a bag of empty cans.
But unwanted puppies.
Yeah, and why don't we have a levy on the people who are making billions and billions of pounds during lockdown? Why isn't there a levy on Netflix or Facebook or these companies that are Deliveroo, these companies that made so much money during lockdown?
Have a levy on that.
These companies that got like enormous, exorbitant PPE contracts. Why don't we have a levy? Why don't we claw back some of that money that was handed over to Matt Hancock's landlord? Or
I quite endorse that. But I think it's a tricky one with oil because I do know what you mean, and we have to encourage people to think that oil is a profitable business so that they invest in it, so that they will be able to turn this corner. On the other hand, it does seem to have been a fairly safe investment over the years, doesn't it? It feels
I've invested in oil, and I've lost a lot of money. And I don't want to see it now. Now there's a chance of like getting a tiny bit of money, and the government's coming in and be like, no, we're going to have a. Well, it's not the government doing it.
I mean, putting aside your woes on the stock exchange, people have a very distorted view, generally speaking, of who is benefiting. Most of the investors in oil companies are pension companies.
Absolutely.
It's our own money. It's our own chance of being able to eat when we're a bit older.
Yeah, and unions, institutions. So, I mean, it's not a few billionaires in a castle. It's not Mr. Burns making this.
What do you think, Eric?
I think we're going to see a lot of that money, I would imagine, the oil companies have given back to shareholders. So I don't think they're going to invest all of it in the future.
No.
I think the only way to separate Boris, it seems, from his loyalty to the oil companies is maybe convince him that he's married to an oil company, and then he'll want to leave the oil companies and then tax them. But or maybe this is the way Boris flirts. He's like, will he tax them? Won't he tax them? He's just going back and forth.
He doesn't seem. I mean, Rishi has been hedging his bets more than Boris in a sense, hasn't he? It feels like it would be his decision. But even he, who is a capitalist, I think, instincteally, and certainly protects his wife's billions.
Why don't we have a levy on Rishi Sunak's wife? And
that would clear it up, wouldn't it?
That's a lot more than oil companies.
I was going to say it probably would. Anyway, Eric, another bleak milestone on this topic before we leave it has been passed. And
this is in The Guardian as well. The UK petrol and diesel prices hit record highs, with petrol hitting £1.67 a litre and diesel up to £1.80. And there's been accusations of profiteering, especially because Rishi Sunak did the 5p discount on the fuel duty, and that has not been passed on since it was put in place in March. So where is that extra money going? I mean, if you want to even feel worse, because a gallon, we charge by the gallon for gas in America.
Yeah.
But per litre, it'd be just 99p still in America, even with the high petrol prices.
Just under.
So
but it's come up from a very low base there, hasn't it? And
but,
to be fair, you have to drive everywhere. I mean,
exactly. And the cars are huge.
Yeah.
But if you ever want
to... Well, not so much now. Funnily enough, I saw somebody, this is a slight diversion, but I saw somebody discussing this on Twitter the other day, American people, and they were all saying their cars have got incredibly better in the last 10 or 15 years. Way, way better. I think more so than European and British cars, actually. American, the kind of cars they drive. And I think partly it is that they have finally sort of moved out from that era of driving huge Chryslers and Fords that were kind of impressive, you know, with a big bunch front seat and everything. But thirsty, noisy, bouncy, I don't know. I think things are getting better in that respect.
Yeah.
Fuel, I mean, MPG is at least twice what it was for a luxury car. Now, I drive a pretty decent car, and it does 50 miles to the gallon.
What sort of car have you got?
It's a BMW. But it was everyone says when you buy a car, you make an emotional decision and then you scramble around for facts to support it and rationalise it around to shore it up. But it is quite easy to find those facts now. It's not... You really have to try to find a thirsty car. So although, yes, a tank of fuel has gone up, a litre of fuel has gone up, but actually, pound for pound, mile for mile, I'm not sure it's that much worse than it was 10 years ago. I don't know. Be interesting to know that.
Yeah, I think, but the impact of seeing it just pile up as you're buying it, it might go a little bit further.
Yeah,
that still has an emotional response as well,
when it
because
goes
you can
into
see the money just going straight
when
out.
You fill a tank, that definitely has an impact.
Well, we should have been developing North Sea oil in the last 10 years. You know, because of the government's green policy, we haven't been developing. There's fields in the North Sea that could be pumping out oil and pumping out petrol that would mean that Britain was self-sufficient. The Cambo field in the North Sea, and instead they've all been shuttered because everybody's been like, no, we'll just get oil from Russia. It'll be fine while we build all our windmills and our solar panels.
Hippies in ribs have been circling the oil rig, and
is that where you
know?
Is
that where you invested, Leo? That way, North Sea.
I invested in Shell, who would have been developing the Cambo field, and I think it's ridiculous that they didn't. And all these oil companies are actually now trying to be green, and it's like, stop trying to be green. Get the oil out of the ground. Let me burn it.
It has
in my
to
car.
be said. I mean, you know, parking. I suppose that obviously the climate crisis thing is not utterly irrelevant in this respect, but the reality is, economically speaking, all economic success has always been rooted in cheap energy.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that's ever made a difference in human development. Over the last 150 years, anyway, the birth of the Industrial Revolution was obviously about finally, you know, creating steam power that could withstand the high pressure and temperatures involved, creating the infrastructure for that. Oil, when it became the choice for vehicular transport, transformed everything. You know, it's always about that. And if you try and make the move towards a new form of energy that isn't yet actually efficient enough to support it, you're going to get pain, not to mention geophysical, geopolitical disturbance and destabilisation.
It leaves the situation open for exploitation by somebody like Putin. We're suddenly dependent on him.
Yeah. The clear reality, which, I mean, a lot of people have said, oh, America were taunting him, NATO were taunting him, but the other thing, the massive factor in it is he just knows how powerful he is, because we've left ourselves. What do you think about that, Eric?
Well, I mean, but it raises the urgency of why we need to invest in the technologies that are going to get us there, because it should exist.
Yeah.
And we can't keep going the way we're going. It just, you know, as we can see,
they
other
have
stories,
to hurry up.
But yeah, they've got
it's basically
the
like
there.
It's like a relay race, right? You have to pass the baton on. It takes the guy to run to where the next guy is waiting. You know, you can't just like head off without the baton.
Yeah.
You know, if clean energy hasn't arrived with the baton, oil can't just head. I know that's a kind of reverse. It's not. But you know what I'm saying.
I know what you mean. And also, we're always going to need oil. As comedians, we need oil. I can't drive like 200 miles and then plug my car in for 4 hours. I've got to be able to drive the whole way.
I do actually take my a bike and train as a combo, and they could make that an awful lot easier. I will say that actually.
It's still
make it a lot easier.
Even at these prices, it's still cheaper to drive in a lot of cases than get the train.
Oh yeah, certainly if you've left it till the last couple of days to put the tickets. So Leo, news from one of UK's most notorious hospitals now. This is unsettling.
Yeah, this is really sad. So it's the NHS Trust at the centre of the worst maternity scandal in British history. The Royal Shrewsbury Hospital is today being fined £1.3 million after failing to provide safe care to a pensioner and a dialysis patient at one of its hospitals who both died. So a judge imposed a fine of £800,000 for one person, Mohammed Ismail Zaman, who's only 31. He was undergoing dialysis, and he died from blood loss. Dialysis when they take your blood out, you know, because of kidney failure or whatever, and then clean it in a dialysis machine, and obviously then the blood is at risk. So he suffered severe blood loss and sadly died. And they were also fined just over £500,000 over a charge brought in relation to Mr. Max Dingle, who's 83, and he died after his head became trapped between a bed rail and a mattress. So obviously not, you know, providing safe.
It just suggests that there's no one. I mean, it's almost like horrifically. I mean, it's almost like slapstick, isn't it? It's like absurd. Get your head stuck in wedged and then stuck there until you die. It's ridiculous.
And obviously hospitals. I mean, they've got procedures. You know, good care trusts will have procedures in place that, you know, this doesn't happen. It's not. This is an accident that could happen to anybody. This is, you know, there's processes and procedures to stop this kind of thing happening. And obviously this is coming after, I mean, there's a horrific maternity scandal. So there were 201 babies and 9 mothers died in avoidable circumstances at the same time.
That was not to go back into that, but that was the sort of epicenter of the whole discussion of whether almost like a sort of cult of midwifery that was suggesting that you should try and avoid medicalising pregnancy and birth, that it was something that could be done with breathing exercises and so on and so forth. This was the same scandal, I think.
And was it the hospital that was people were saying you can do the breathing and?
Yeah, well, I think it was this was a particular district where there were a lot of But I remember our own experience of it, and we've spoken to lots of other people as well. There was an enormous amount of pressure on women at that time to reject medicalisation of what was seen to be essentially just a normal, healthy practice, ignoring the fact, how many babies used to die, how many women used to die, how incredibly... It's in the Bible how dangerous childbirth is. It's regarded as a punishment by God for Eve. Mischief in the Garden of Eden, So there's really no shame in availing yourself of up-to-date medical practices, Hedrick.
You've taken an off-ramp I did not expect in covering this story. I mean, obviously, overall, top to bottom, the management in this NHS trust has been horrific. My wife works in the birth world, and there is a focus on demedicalizing it because I think there's been risks of that as well. Yeah. But obviously, everything about what was happening up here is awful, and I mean it's good that hopefully they're fixing it. And we have another story coming up later about the American healthcare system, and I still think the NHS is a better option overall.
Well, my argument to that is always they're not the only two options, and that is there is a very sort of binary mindset in this country, and possibly in America too, about it's either because they will often say, well, do you really want the NHS? Where there are loads of other countries that have healthcare systems that offer third, fourth, fifth choices. Anyway, that is the end of part one. Coming up in part two, we have tube strikes, we have fishermen or fisher people, and the Espresso police. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans. Tonight I am joined by Leo Kearse and Eric McElroy. Well, Leo, it wouldn't be bank holiday without a tube strike.
That's right. Yes.
The gift to Her Majesty.
There's a tube strike. So Mick Lynch, the RMT General Secretary, has said that staff at Euston and Green Park have suffered years of sustained bullying and intimidation by a manager who's created a toxic working environment. Oh, boo-hoo-hoo, you big babies. Oh, my God, these are guys that are like 50 years old. Used to, like 100 years ago, they'd be fighting in the trenches in Ardennes or wherever it is, where it makes a nice patty.
Has he just dug around to try and find some excuse for a tube strike?
Well, you know what unions love? They love not doing any work. The only reason to join a union, there's no other reason, is to not do any work. So you've got an excuse, you get like some sort of, extended bank holiday. This is the Platinum Jubilee bank holiday. It's going to be sunny out. You know, you might want to be out in the sunshine frolicking around in a paddling pool instead of under the ground driving a tube train. Which, by the way, tube trains don't even have steering wheels. It's not a skilled job. They get paid, like, what is it, 60 grand? They got a button that says go, a button that says stop, and a button that says open the doors, and that's it. Well, they can train a badger to do that job.
They have people bouncing off the windscreen occasionally. I think that's why the pay is quite high.
That's a perk. That's a perk. You get something to, you get a funny story for down the pub.
I do think it is extraordinary that they want to strike on a bank holiday when I would have thought they're probably on double pay anyway as well.
And it's not just any bank holiday, it's the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, probably one of our last big appearances, and it just shows that the RMT and Mick Lynch have no respect for the Queen and no respect for this country, and we need to replace them with robots.
What do you think, Eric? You're obviously probably more of a union man, aren't you?
Well, I think after that, I'm never getting on the tube with you after you said that in a public forum. Just have nothing to do with this man. I mean, normally, I obviously being more on the left, I suppose here, I should be supporting the unions. But, I mean, I never really understand. When the tube goes on strike, at least now, because I never know why they've gone on strike, and now I know the reason.
I mean, sometimes they've gone for pay, sometimes for conditions. This seems absurdly small and nitpicking, and I would assume it is going to get sorted out because it would be unthinkable that they would lose. But it is I mean, they've had 2 years during which the tube was running empty, essentially. You know, just there for essential workers and so on. It must have been an extraordinarily difficult financial burden on Transport for London or whoever. I don't know how the finances are. You know, it's extremely opportunistic.
Yeah.
Just like it's not on.
It does feel like you can't pull the strike lever every single time you have a dispute.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think not. So there it is, 3 out of 3, no sympathy. Eric, our first culture war story of the night. This is from the nation's favourite blood sport.
This is from the Daily Mail, of course. This is a story right up their alley. I choose to...
I want to make it clear, I wasn't referring to the Daily Mail as the nation's favourite blood sport. But carry on.
But I can see why you thought that.
The comment section is.
Yeah.
I choose to identify as a fisherman, says a woman who won the top angling award, and she rejects, quote-unquote, woke demands, of course it's the Daily Mail, to swap the term fisher people or fishers, which I'd never heard before. No. This is Ashley Mullinger. She's won the Fishing News Awards last week for, she was the honour of an under 10-metre boat, so... I'm assuming catching fish in that boat. Didn't say exactly what she was doing. I mean, this is one, I'm very much, people should allow themselves to be identified as they want to. And I can see here, fisherman, I mean, I don't know. I think there's some terms, like I know in the acting community, this was more than woke was ever even thought of. There was a move to say, people wanted to be called just actors. They didn't want to be labeled actresses because it was like a less than thing at the time.
Yeah.
And I think this is a similar thing. We don't need to say hue people. This is a word that just represents an industry. And if she wants to be called that, that's fine by me.
But she's an angler, right? Why not just say angler? That's it. I mean, it's actually in top angling awards.
Because the A-N in angler is in man. And
mangler.
No, it's actually...
Womangler.
Because there's another job, which is somebody goes around with a protractor.
Oh,
and
OK.
That's as well. But no, this is great. It's great to see somebody standing up for the patriarchy. Finally, you see so many people bashing the patriarchy and all the wonderful stuff. I mean, you talk about oil and energy delivering economic progress and societal progress. What about the patriarchy? As soon as we start getting rid of the patriarchy, everything falls apart. Maybe there's something to be said. And also, who's going to all these oil rigs? Sewage workers, bin men. There's never a feminist campaign to get more women on the back of a bin lorry.
Bin
you know what I mean?
There are actually a lot of women bin people in Brighton, where I live.
Well, of course, in Brighton.
The funny thing is, in a way, I mean, this story makes it clear what she's saying. She's saying, I'm quite happy to be known as a fisherman. I don't need the term changing. Yeah. But on the other hand, that could equally be a trans thing, couldn't it? She could be saying, I want to be called a fisherman.
Yeah.
So you guys are supporting someone being able to self-identify.
Self-identify,
want to be called. That's what you're saying?
I don't really care.
Absolutely.
I would just say call yourself an angler. I mean, Fisher people is weird, though, isn't it? That sounds like Fisher-Price toys or something, doesn't it? Like little plastic, like Lego toys, Fisher people or something. Yeah. You can't get away with that. Anyway, I'm glad she's won it and I hope she's happy. It's what she would have wanted news, Leo, now.
Well, we don't know if it's what she would have wanted, but basically, so Alec Baldwin, he was making this film called Rust, and there was a terrible accident on the set, and I think it was one of the producers or the cinematographer. So Helena Hutchins, and so she was shot and killed during filming, and
it's virtually the first story this programme ever covered, I think.
Yeah.
It was almost exactly our first week, I think.
Yeah. Have you got some sort of Rain Man memory of all the stories we've ever covered?
You were dressed in the red
going
top
through your spreadsheet. But yeah, so I mean, obviously production was halted on that film, but now the dust has settled. The producer of the film has said that they want to finish the film to honour the memory of the cinematographer that was shot, and also, incidentally, to make money.
I mean, I suppose
they've lost
the
a lot of...
implication is that you either do it to honour her memory or to dishonour her memory. So he's just kind of going, on balance, I'm doing it not to disregard that.
Yeah,
but
they obviously weren't going to come out and say, like, yeah, we're doing it to dishonour her, because I mean, that would have been a bad PR move.
That's not ideal.
But, I mean, they've sunk a lot of money into the production, and they've also sunk a lot of money into the fine. So they were fined a maximum fine of £110,000. That was the maximum they could be fined for serious and willful failures after the shooting. Because somebody was killed and somebody else was wounded. The director was wounded.
Yes.
So, there's, I'm sure for all they talk about honouring the cinematographer, maybe they want to make some money as well.
I don't object to it, and you're right. It is just, it's fairly base level cant, but it's not really, it's not inexplicable, is it? It's a certain bit of spin. What do you think, Eric? Should they be allowed to carry on with it?
I don't think we need this movie. There's so much stuff.
Oh, I don't think we need it.
And I mean, I think the question would be, and it wasn't in this article, how does her family feel? If her family, because I know her husband, I think, was looking at a lawsuit with the production company or something. So if they were saying, yes, please honour her memory with this, then do it by all means. But I would want to hear what they thought first.
Oliver Reed died on the set of Gladiator, right? And that was, they thought there was a certain amount of suspicion that he had, I mean, he drank himself to death over the course of a long lifetime. Obviously, it wasn't an on-set accident, but there was some degree of irregularity about he'd managed to... I can't remember what he was. He was like on a...
He was arm wrestling.
...ship or something, doing arm wrestling. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, I just think,
But that's different than being... essentially...
Literally shot on set,
because of a lack of diligence that was clearly there.
And also Gladiator was a great film. I've got to be honest, a Western called Rust starring Alec Baldwin doesn't sound like a great film.
No, he's not my favourite person in terms of his politics or whatever, but some of his performances have been fantastic.
I think it's
terrific. Glenn Ross, he was amazing.
Politics is as good as his gunmanship. I mean, like this. I mean, also, my dad's a gunsmith. There's so many things you get taught. Like, you never carry a loaded gun. You always check the chamber. Yeah. You always carry it open. And you never, ever, ever point it at anybody.
There were all kinds of extraordinary irregularities on set that were kind of being whispered about, that they were using the guns, like larking around, using them for target practice on set, which you obviously shouldn't ever put a live round into a...
Yeah.
Anyway, we don't want to visit that whole thing. Well... It remains to be seen whether it will get out. I think he's only expressed a hope at this point. Eric, a disproportionate fine for a disproportionate price. An eye for an eye.
I agree in some ways, but in some ways I think this might be justified. So this is a Florence coffee shop where the customer called the police because of the price of an espresso. In Italy, you're supposed to have a sign up that says how much you charge for the coffee, and they didn't have the sign up, so the cafe bar was fined €1,000 because the man was charged €2 for his espresso, which is £1.70, which in London I'd be happy to pay that.
That is a reasonable price.
But I don't feel as sympathetic for the man because it was decaffeinated.
What? He paid £1.70 for decaf espresso?
But he shouldn't be drinking... Why are you drinking a decaf espresso? That doesn't make any sense.
That makes zero sense.
So I was on board. I was like, fine them, go for it, take their money. But until I found that out, I was like,
no, that is insane. Why a decaf espresso?
It doesn't...
I mean, decaf, is it like a way you flavour a milk drink or something, right? That sort of makes some sense. A decaf latte or something.
Maybe he just likes the flavour, but he doesn't want to go and have a poo.
Fake beer.
Well, fake beer is OK if you're just trying to wean yourself off or kid yourself, you know.
That's true.
But an espresso, it's gone in a moment. Anyway, the whole point of espresso is that you get the hit quickly and move on without interrupting your day. And
it's totally pointless. But what I loved about the story...
Angry, a decaf espresso, that's like having a decaf heroin shot.
They'll have that. I mean with woke Londoners, they'll have... Because they've already got...
just like the sensation of tying off, you know.
They've already got ethical cocaine, where you know that it's been grown organically, and, I think the children that are killed in the production are slightly older, so...
And it's the wrap comes from a sustainable forest. Oh, well. Leo, what is the EU using Russia as an excuse for now?
Oh, my God. So the EU is bringing through regulations around solar panels. So they're going to make solar panels mandatory on all new buildings in the European Union under a new proposal aimed at ending Europe's reliance on Russian fossil fuels by 2027 and supercharging the transition to green energy so they can pick up that baton you were talking about. I mean, this is going to be fantastic. Solar panels on every rooftop in Aberdeen. Oh, the electricity is just going to fly out of us. What an amazing idea. No, I mean...
Power a dialysis machine for a rabbit. Wasn't that thing on the Ministry of Defence?
So, yeah, I mean, this is coming from a good place. You know, we obviously need to fill the gap that's going to be left from Russian oil. Because, you know, like Germany alone is still paying £1 billion a day to Russia. So it's paying for his war. But, you know, we need to think a bit smarter. There's no point in putting solar panels in Scotland. We should perhaps look at putting them in Morocco or putting them in North Africa.
That, but actually, I mean, I take your point in Aberdeen, but Germany is much more efficient than Spain, for instance, with its solar use. It's much more successful in its...
So even the solar panels are lazier in Spain?
Yeah. I think there's just fewer of them. But, I mean, you would think if you covered... the rural parts of Andalusia with so you could probably power Europe with that, right? But of course it's distribution. It's still you lose a lot in the wires. But I mean, Germany, which the weather in Germany is maybe not as bad as Aberdeen, but it's not great. But they are capable. There is something to this.
The other thing is that solar panel efficiency is just increasing every year. It's like that curve for computer processing power.
Right, yeah.
So you know the price is coming down.
The price is very, very much so. So we're all agreement on that.
No, I think the EU has great ideas, and I like their work. What I did love in here was somebody who's one of the experts that's behind all this said a great quote that sounded like it could have come from this government that said the cheapest energy is the energy you don't use, and telling people to turn things off, turn the heat down. And basically, you know, if you're worried about the energy crisis, don't use any.
It's quite interesting as well. We got a smart meter recently, you know, and obviously it's horrifying, certain things, but other things are actually quite affordable. You can have all the lights on in a house now. It costs about £0.01 an hour. I mean, those new light bulbs, the non-incandescent ones, you know, various forms of that, absurdly cheap. So you can actually make the house feel quite cheerfully, like, lit. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying it's the same as warm, but it can actually be kind of... Whereas a kettle, boiling a kettle...
Really?
Oh, my God! It's so expensive. And my wife, and I've been saying this for years, but now I have it in digital form, she will fill the kettle...
To the top.
To the top to make a cup of tea. Why? I don't know. You're boiling a bath full of, you know, if you just fill the amount that you need and boil it, you will save. I mean, that could add up to £1 a day if you're a dozen cups of tea a day.
Well, you should get one of those taps from the GBNews kitchen. Boiling water comes out.
OK, coming up after the break, the weirder news stories of the days: aliens, UFOs, cats and dogs, fish and chips. See you in a couple of minutes.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back to part 3 of Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. I'm joined by Leo Kearse and Eric McElroy. This is the part of the show where things get a bit weird. We go into the tabloids. Eric, what have we got about alien space rock news?
Yep, a Daily Mail, which is definitely a tabloid. Alien space rock unearthed in Egypt, maybe the first evidence on Earth of a rare supernova explosion.
Wow.
So the rock was found 25 years ago, so I'm not sure why it's in the news now, other than that probably the science has gotten better.
Yeah.
But the Hypatia stone, the chemical makeup from they've seen inside of it, they've got the dust and cloud stuff. That is apparently from a standard candle supernova, but the things that are in it are not common in the Milky Way galaxy.
Right.
So basically, they're diving into a rock from outer space.
This is an imported rock.
This is an imported rock. It's crash landed here. It's come into our country. Not had a passport.
It's like chlorinated chicken.
It should be sent to Rwanda. I mean, it's a rock not from our galaxy, and they're cracking it open. I mean, this is the beginning of a horror movie. We've had a pandemic, we have war, and now we're going to have alien rock
like
people.
A sort of egg.
Yeah, this is not good.
Have you seen the... Where was the desert, by the way? Do we know?
It was in Egypt somewhere.
It was Egypt, right?
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, you can combine that with some mummies waking up.
Great,
I mean, it's not going to be
very big, I think, was it, apparently? It's not like a massive asteroid.
Good to see we're still stealing stones from Egypt.
Yes, that's right.
Parts of the empire never die.
They don't know what to do with the Rosetta, and they don't know what to do with this. We'll take care of that.
Yeah. But this, there's some dispute here by the sounds of it. So they analysed 15 elements of the stone and found a number of them match what would be expected in a white dwarf, a dense white dwarf.
Yeah.
I went to school with dense white dwarf star explosion.
From your absurdly elevated perspective, I imagine that's most of us.
They also found that a further 6 elements did not fit with a Type LA supernova model. So. Are they just making it up? I mean, this could be a chunk of bathroom tile.
I think the proportion, I think there's got more, it's not as much silicon and magnesium as you'd expect in a rock that came from our, I don't know why we seem to have a certain sort of proportion of certain elements
low
in
level
our rocks.
Of silicon, chromium.
They always said it's long been thought to be the first stone that was found from the heart of a comet. I don't know if that means I don't know if that's the same, if that's the origin. But when you read these stories in the tabloid, it goes, what happens is a white dwarf and it gobbled up another star, and that created... And you go, come on, this can't possibly be terms that would make any sense to an actual scientist, you know. So it's interesting, though. If it's come from very, very far away, it's been hurtling through space, and, you know, that's quite exciting. Do you know who it's named after, by the way?
No, I don't. Hypatia?
The first documented female mathematician of note. In ancient times. I thought you'd enjoy that, Eric.
Thank you
can share that with your...
Probably the 1960s.
Your knitting circle or whatever.
They'll be very interested, Simon. Thank you.
So we go now from alien space rocks to alien space rockets, Leo.
Oh, yeah, more out of this world stuff, interstellar stuff. So sightings of UFOs are being increasingly reported over America's skies. So a Pentagon task force, which was established in 2020, has received almost 400 reports of unexplained flying objects between 2004 and today. So this is the first congressional hearing on the subject in more than 50 years. Yeah. So sightings rose last year after a US government report said that at least 140 cases of unidentified aerial phenomena have been reported by military pilots in the same period. I mean, and coincidentally, this is completely unrelated, but it's coincided with the legalisation of cannabis and the widespread adoption of psychedelics such as magic mushrooms and DMT. But it's great. This is a news story. This takes me back to the 90s when everything was great.
50s even.
Yeah, everything was fun.
Yes.
Everything was fun, and like the conspiracy theories were fun. They weren't like stuff around vaccines or whatever. So yeah, this is great. I hope this is going to wind things back, and everybody will stop obsessing over race and diversity and all this sort of stuff, and we can just go back to getting on with each other.
Well, I mean, the one great thing about the aliens is they do, they make humans seem more like one another by comparison, don't they?
Yeah.
There have been various stories which have been orientated around the possibility of harnessing the power of aliens to bring about harmony on Earth.
Yeah.
What do you think?
A nice change.
Do you believe in it?
I mean, I don't know why you're thinking this is drug-induced, considering one of them resembled a giant tic-tac. But I mean, I've heard about this before. The Pentagon talking about this because they had so many pilots that were seeing things and not reporting it.
Yeah.
That they've gone back and watched video footage and then be able to cross-document that this incident happened, and they haven't been able to say why. But because of the taboo about saying anything, they weren't saying that something occurred. So it's either a foreign government's aircraft of some sort, or it's an illusion. But whatever it is, they want to
normally
be
think
investigated.
it's a sort of unintentional equivalent of a heads-up display, isn't it? It's an artifact from lighting inside the cabin that appears to be outside, and that can happen. And certainly if you're being flung around at 3G and all the rest of it.
But by stigmatizing it, people weren't reporting it, and then that's a big problem. So that's why they're trying to bring it out there and say, these are unidentified things, who knows what they are, and, the world is being invaded by ants.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing. It's come back because in the 50s, when it was absolutely the dawn of the UFO era, it was also the height of the Cold War, wasn't
and the rocket age.
Rocket age, and they used all the sci-fi films were always like, essentially the subtext was the Cold War, right? The paranoia and everything, and they had the UFOs and we had Sputnik and so on. And it does feel like it's like we're at war with Russia again, and, and here come the UFOs. I mean, it's all like...
And there's in Scotland there's a triangle where loads and loads of UFOs are spotted. Since I remember this from the 90s.
The Cumbernauld, the Buckfast Triangle. It's
somewhere. Well, the whole of Scotland is a Buckfast Triangle. But it's where they do a lot of military testing of planes, and obviously sometimes the military have new planes, new prototypes that they don't reveal. So some of them can look very, very strange.
That's true. Eric.
Yes.
This should cheer everyone up as prices spiral upwards at the tills. We now have a good reason to smile.
So this is in the Telegraph. It's time to wave goodbye to cards and bring on your smiles as you pay with facial recognition software or other forms of biometric payment. MasterCard is launching this. So you can either pay with your face, basically, slammed into the till, with a gesture, which I don't know if you can choose the gesture for like when you're buying petrol, if there's a certain gesture that you do more than another.
The one that you used to hold the pump.
But I like the Telegraph did go for the puns in this story, of course. It said the cost of groceries may be rising, but shoppers will have to grin and bear it.
Yeah, I like the idea though that you have to, because I've had to disable. Was it called retina recognition or something?
Yeah.
I had a previous phone that used to recognise my index finger fingerprint to open it, and that was really reliable.
Yep.
But I went from one manufacturer to another, and this one wants to do the eyes, and I can't do it because my eyes are too small. I promise you, but it's like it doesn't have enough to work with. It's like,
just going, you're just
I don't know who that is. Honestly,
opening up like this to try and get into your phone.
And then it looks at your whole face, and if you hold it too close.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea. I mean, they are extraordinary what they can identify from. But of course, gait recognition is the big one in Chinese surveillance cameras, right? They can tell who you are by the way you walk.
Well,
like the Bee Gees,
Yeah, I mean, they're trying this in Brazil because, people smiling. They would have wanted to do that here with British teeth.
Yeah, British teeth. But it's because our teeth are bad, but these teeth are like families, in Tolstoy. All happy families are the same, all unhappy families are unhappy in their own way. Bad teeth are the same.
Yeah.
Kind of all bad teeth are bad in their own particular way, so they're actually better for biometrics. Whereas your happy American teeth with their dental correction surgery
are no use for identifying people. So if you die in a plane crash and you've got veneers, they'll never bury you. But yeah, this is. I mean, you mentioned China. I mean, this is the step on the way to digital cash and our biometrics being stored by companies, which can then be hacked and stolen. And also with digital cash, I think we need to bring back real cash because then you've got a certain amount of anonymity, and also you can decide how and when you're going to spend it, because it's just, you know, a £10 note can't be physically changed. With digital cash, you can have mandates that it has to be spent within a certain time period, it has to be spent on a certain type of product, or it can be just cut off completely, as we're probably going to see in China. With, you know, they've got the social credit score, and then you can have your access to banking and everything denied. Well, I'm going to say China, it's happening in Canada as well.
Is it really? Is
Trudeau cut off banking facilities for people who donated to truckers.
Yeah. I mean, that is it's a serious point, isn't it? If they're moving towards that point at which you're just having credits deducted. And it would be possible, of course, you're right, yes, to say that you need to sort of spend earn your income in certain proportions according to what they think would be healthy or whatever.
If you get
they would start very, very... just it's only your own health we're thinking about, you know.
Like unemployment benefit, they'll say, oh, you have to spend it on cans of chickpeas instead of scratch cards. But I don't know, I quite like the fact that I can get my job seekers allowance. Well, I don't get it, but like, you know, I can get whatever I want. I'm not signing on in 13 different cities anymore, but I can take that money and I can spend it on scratch cards if I want.
A tiny shred of dignity used to remain there. Yes, pavement wars next. This also feels a little bit like a, I don't know, slightly something dystopian about this. I don't like it, but go on. So you've got pavement wars, did you?
It's Leo with the parking on the pavement.
Yeah.
Oh, right. That's what it was. I was trying to work out. I think you said paper wars. So motorists should be banned from parking on the pavement in the UK because it impedes those with disabilities and puts people off from walking in their neighbourhoods. I thought it already was banned. You're not allowed to park on the pavement
in London.
In London, it's banned. But outside. It's not. So, but it obviously
you
really...
can't just park right across the pavement. They mean like a wheel up on the curb a little bit, just to sort of... Don't they? You can't just park on the pavement.
I think they just mean parking on the pavement, because I know in certain cities, like in Coventry, some of the parking is, half on the pavement.
Right, okay.
But obviously, you know, if somebody's in a wheelchair, somebody's got a pram, then it's very difficult for them to get round. They have to go out on the road, and that's dangerous for them. And even for people who are walking, which obviously we want to encourage people to walk now that we don't have any oil to put in people's cars. I think it should be banned.
This is an absolutely true story which relates to this. On Christmas Day, about 5 or 6 years ago, I was taking a bag of rubbish down to the wheelie bins in Hove, like one every 10 houses or something, so you have to walk down a bit to it. And a neighbour about 4 doors down had guests had arrived, and they had their own car in the driveway, and the neighbour's car had parked with about 3 feet of it in the driveway, and then the rest was just across the pavement. And it was just completely parked, completely blocking me off. And I was outraged.
Yeah.
I didn't say it. And then they came out, and I said, sorry, you're not going to leave this here, right? It's like Christmas morning. I was trying to be nice to the neighbours. And she said, oh, it's only while they just popped in for a cup of tea. I was like, you can't just park across the pavement. You can park across the driveway.
Yeah.
You won't get done for that on Christmas Day. You can't park across the pavement. What if somebody was on a mobility scooter, I said, because I didn't just want to go, I want to walk to the bin without encountering this nonsense. Anyway, they went like that, and huffed and puffed and came and... As I was coming back from the bin, which was around the corner, I promise you, somebody on a mobility scooter was having to pull into the road to get around. I was like, yes. It's probably the first one I'd ever seen on that pavement. I seem to have sort of wished them into existence in order to make my point. Oh, God. I cracked open a bottle as soon as I got that one. I was like, yes.
In Tenerife, you see squads of people going about on mobility scooters with, like, toddlers between their legs and like, a kebab in one hand and a pint. They're not disabled.
No,
you can just hire mobility scooters for fun. I wanted to hire one, but my missus wouldn't let me.
Eric, we've kept it clean until now, but you have the show's entire what do you quotient?
Quotient of certain words, yes.
To use up now.
So this is a deflowering story. The Cambodian government is begging people, and I want to make sure I get this headline right, to stop picking rare carnivorous penis plants to pose with in photos. There's a lot packed into that headline. Basically, this is a plant that has a very unique look. It's got a long stem with a unique top.
Yeah.
And it looks a lot like genitalia. And basically people are picking the flowers and getting photos with them and holding them up and doing... I think there's a lot of Hindus that come through the particular field and pick them for a certain reason.
And they really do. I mean, I've seen these pictures. I was thinking, oh, come on, what's he going to... But it doesn't just look like genitalia. Let's be honest. It looks like an extraordinarily sort of lush and proud... You know, it's like a Japanese erotic watercolour or something.
It doesn't look like my penis. My penis is penis coloured. Not like weird plant colour.
Florid and rosy. And
I'm sure you might want to get that looked at. But basically, they're worried that people are picking them so much that it's going to ruin the flower being there at all. But it eats ants. So it is.
Is that what they got it there for? As pest control? Is that the idea?
I guess so. Yeah.
That is one thing my penis does do.
You've never given it the offer. You lie in bed long enough with crumbs of jam butties on your stomach.
It was
Hang on,
described.
what's it doing?
It was also described as smelling very sweet, just like candy.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, that's all we have time for, folks. My thanks to Leo and Eric. I've been Simon Evans. I will be back with you the same time tomorrow. It's been an absolute pleasure. Enjoy your evening or indeed morning if you're watching tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed.